Welcome back. Beverly Knight started singing when she was just 4 years old in her local church choir in Wolverhampton. That's very important. We'll come back to Wolverhampton in a minute. 30 years on, the soul diva has produced 5 albums and was awarded an MBE by the Queen for services to music and charity earlier this year. She's an ambassador for Christian Aid and is an active campaigner for the anti-AIDS charity, the Terence Higgins Trust. Her latest album, Music City Soul, is out on the 7th of May. And before we start talking to Beverly, here's a quick look, a sensational preview of the video for her new single, which is called No Man's Land.
I can't move on, stumbling round, hanging on, but going down. No man's land.
Terrific. That really was good. And what was the inspiration there? Was the music first, and then when it came to the lyrics, did you think of the title first, or did the title come later?
The title came from a conversation that I was having with a couple of the musicians that were in the room with me at the time of composing the music to what became No Man's Land. I was just describing a relationship that had ended and the feelings. I was reflecting on how I felt and that I was in limbo, as it were, unable to move forward and certainly not wanting to move backward. And I used the phrase no man's land, and the two musicians looked at each other and thought, ah,
You've got
there
it.
we are, we've got it.
Yeah.
And then I composed the rest of the song from there.
Right. And this album you did in Nashville, Tennessee.
That's right,
And of
yes.
course, I remember the last time I was there was doing an interview with Garth Brooks, and you do think of Nashville as country music more than soul, Music
Yes.
City Soul. I mean, soul is rarer in Nashville than country.
Yes, of course. Nashville is a hub of country music, but what it's also a hub for is songwriting talents and musicians of a fantastic calibre, as well as singers, and that attracts people from all over the world to that city, so much so that it has been dubbed, you know, Music City, and I picked up on that and called the album Music City Soul, just because they're great songs.
I mean, Nashville has been called the Wolverhampton of America, probably.
I wished.
How important was Wolverhampton in your life? I mean, how old were you when you left there?
I was 19.
Oh,
I left Wolverhampton at 19 to pursue my degree, and I moved from Wolverhampton to Cheltenham, so not very far, and kind of never moved back. I moved from there to London, but Wolverhampton informed and shaped not only my character but also my music. It greatly informed my music because it wasn't a cool place to be born and raised in terms of music in the way that London is, or New York. It was a regular town, as it was then, you know, and so it enabled me to start with a blank canvas when it came to music, starting with gospel, which my parents encouraged me to listen to, and then spreading out into all different facets of music and musical styles.
And looking through your life, it looks as though two big influences were Sam Cooke.
Yes.
Am I right? And
Yes.
Aretha Franklin.
Absolutely right. Yes, they were the first two big voices that I remember hearing as a little child. Sam Cooke in particular, I have very vivid memories of standing by the turntable at home and watching the 33, as it was then, the LP go round and round, and listening to this voice, this powerhouse, you know, singing back to me, and just standing there as a child being utterly transfixed. And that feeling never left me, and I was determined that as I was older, I would hopefully transfix people in the way that he transfixed me.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what
Yeah.
about Aretha Franklin? Was it phrasing or what?
With Aretha, it was, I guess, the fact that it was a female listening to another female voice, and the expression and the dexterity that she has in her voice. She's able to go from low and soft and kind of pensive, and then to extraordinary, powerful, high, sustained notes. That dexterity is quite astonishing, and with all the passion. It was never forced, and that was what I learnt from her. Yeah. Incredible phrasing.
Yeah, and who is there now who's still around or whatever who you'd love to work with?
Well as Aretha,
yes.
Of course, we lost Sam Cooke a long time ago. I would love to get in a studio actually with Gladys Knight and see what the two Knight ladies could do. I think that would be amazing, actually.
Yeah, I think that would be that's a great idea.
Yes.
There's some great titles that will spring to mind for that one as well.
For that occasion.
But do you consciously move on? Do you consciously say, right, I've done that, I'm going to go to Nashville because I want a different sound or whatever? I mean, are you looking to do something different next or what?
The way in which I've recorded this album, which was utterly live and very much the way that albums used to be recorded, that will now be my only way of recording. Usually in the music industry, the music is laid down, and then the vocalist comes in and puts, their contribution, and sometimes it's pieced together, sometimes you get one long performance. With this album, everything was done at the same time, together, the way that it was done in the late 50s and early 60s. And that certainly appeals to me, and I don't think anything like that will change. But in terms of creativity, I'm always moving, always.
And a busy life in other ways too. I mean, that trip fighting AIDS and so on to South Africa, I went out there once with Elton John. It's an incredible epidemic, isn't it? In South Africa particularly. Yes,
in South Africa, in Central America, those two places, the rates of infection are incredibly high. The AIDS pandemic is one that I think we who live in the West have become utterly complacent about, and there's an apathy which has set in. We think, oh yes, take tablets and everything's fine, but of course that's not the way HIV/AIDS works. And all I can do with the influence that I have is to just keep sounding the drum, raising the awareness, particularly with younger people who are utterly blasé, and saying, this danger is very, very real. It's not something that happens to your neighbour, it could very well happen to you.
Well, you're a breath of fresh air. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you very much indeed.
Carry on doing the great work, whether it's Nashville next or Wolverhampton.
Or Wolverhampton.
Or return to Wolverhampton. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Time now for our hot spot of the month, in which we focus on a little-known but explosive dispute somewhere around the globe. This week, it's the Diao-Utai dispute. Diao-Utai dispute. Otherwise known as the Senkaku Islands dispute. Or even, another choice for you here, the Pinnacle Islands dispute. You can tell there's a problem when you can't even get people to agree on the name. Anyway, the Diao-Utai Islands are an uninhabited group between Taiwan and China, but were administered by Japan before the Second World War. After that war, the USA took control, but handed the islands back in 1969. But to who? Japan says that the islands are theirs again, but China and Taiwan disagree. In 1978, some Japanese nationalists tried to assert their claim to the islands by building a lighthouse there. Then in 1996, a group of Hong Kong protesters set sail to erect a Chinese flag. but they were turned away by Japanese ships and a helicopter as well too. Then last August it happened again, only this time the boats were from Taiwan. They too were sent packing by the Japanese, all of which leaves the Diaoyutai, or Senkaku, or if you prefer, Pinnacle, islands in a state of nervous and dangerous uncertainty. More flag waving after this incredibly short break.